I had the opportunity, as Liz said, to spend some time interacting with them and trying to engage them on some things that are practical from the VFD, from the time they issued that guidance to the time the final ruling came out. And I didn't spend a ton of time, but I know Liz and Jennifer and some others really spent quite a bit of time interacting with them and trying to make the rule make sense for practitioners. So although it is certainly going to be more burdensome for producers, for practitioners, for feed mills, their efforts were, there are some good things that really came out of that, like being able to issue a VFD for multiple sites, being able to do, for example, the number of pigs instead of the tons, and other things as well. Having a 6-month instead of a 90-day expiration really helps on some of those things. So really appreciate their efforts, and although there will be some wailing and gnashing of teeth as we go forward, hopefully it's much less so because of those efforts. Okay, so first of all, working for a large company, the first thing is, genuinely there's an appreciation for the fact that there's people trying to do the right thing. So first of all, from a sustainability standpoint, we need to protect the uses that are truly extremely important for us for animal health. And so certainly there's a lot of feeling by people primarily outside of here that would say that using a medically important antibiotic for the sole purpose of production performance in the absence of health-related benefits is not judicious. And it is hard to argue that point, even if you can say, well, show me the data that there's no disease resistance, et cetera. And so keeping pork production sustainable, conventional pork production sustainable, is definitely priority number one. As a company, we've already made, probably for a year now, made the changes to where we don't use some of those products, and that's not to say that certainly not to say that that's a better way of producing pigs or not, but to say, okay, we need sustainable conventional production, and we get a lot of pressure. As a food company, not just a pig producer, we get a lot of pressure from those people that are buying our products, and so we felt that was something that was important for us to make as a decision, and certainly can appreciate the concept of there needs to be veterinary oversight and responsible use when we are using products moving forward. So certainly there's going to be more burden, but there are probably good intentions behind the guidance. We definitely want to make the program successful from a standpoint of we don't want to be seen as an enemy of the FDA. This ship has certainly sailed, and we want it to be effective, or we want this to be successful. We want the implementation to go well, because if it doesn't, the FDA can feel like they were successful in implementing this and they did a good thing, rather than turning down the path of losing things that we do feel are important, like preventative use of antibiotics. So the goal is really to try to make, in our company, I'm sure most companies try to make the a successful implementation, and try to do it in a way that's at least burdensome for ourselves, for producers, as we move forward here. So just kind of an overview of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about just kind of an example of pig flow and how that relates to our production system. Talk about how we can integrate the electronic VFD process. Talk about antibiotic decision making, particularly when it comes to the context of a VCPR and what constitutes veterinary oversight. And then just a few important notes or things that I think are important if you're making a VFD program to use in your system and have it integrate. And so pig flow definition, I'm certain is fairly consistent for most people. But what I'd say, it's a constant supply of wean pigs coming from either a single sow farm or some defined group of sow farms, typically on the same health status. And they're going to flow to off-site nurseries, sometimes on-site nurseries or finishers, but typically to off-site nurseries and finishing barns in the context of our operations. One thing that's important I think for a lot of systems, a lot of companies, and I'm sure many independent producers as well, is there's no one-offs or variations in our feed med program by flow. So we don't have circumstances where we're going to decide to put, the example of put Linko in the feed. Whenever we decide there's a disease we need to treat, it's all going to be done through the water med route or injectable route. And so when we determine this is the feed med plan for a flow of pigs or a group of flows of pigs, it is not going to change, and it's going to be static throughout that pig's growing period. So truly, you have this VFD for several sites within a flow makes a lot of sense for us. And just as an example, certainly that's more for effect than trying to read it. If you take example of a 10,000 head sow farm that we have in Oklahoma, and those pigs come up to Iowa, a couple times a week, and at 20 to 24 days of age, at the time I put this together, there was over 90 barns on 26 different sites of pigs. Our barns are probably a little smaller than some out there, but we have many sites, many barns fed by multiple feed mills, 4 feed mills. One of those would be a company mill, and also 3 toll mills in there as well. So you can see how they get spread out throughout the state. So this is the state of Iowa here, and we have a feed mill right here that's a company feed mill with some sites nearby that would feed, but also some sites that would feed out of a toll mill here, and up here. And so it provides some challenges to be able to do things efficiently. When it comes to a VFD, when you're talking about potentially multiple rations, you have to write a VFD for many barns or many sites across different feed mills. And so just to use some extreme examples, if you said you had to do a VFD for every single barn, that's roughly over 200 barns per year out of that flow. And I think the FDA's estimate was 0.125 hours per VFD. So that would be, just for that one flow would be 85 hours a year. And if you apply that to the tall Smithfield, it'd be something like 6,800 hours, which is, a few full-time people just writing VFDs in every single year. And so the ability to be able to do it more efficiently is important. So be able to do multiple barns, multiple sites for the same feed med plan on one VFD is important. And to be able to do it electronically to cut out a lot of the paperwork. And so the main point of this is I think it applies to everybody. There's a lot of ways you can skin the cat legally. You want to make sure you're taking a method that is efficient and still provides the veterinary oversight that is desired, but not leading to just a large increase in administrative work. Some things I think are important aspects to be able to do it efficiently is, number one, the veterinarian, the manufacturer, and the client all need to be able to manage electronic VFDs effectively. The company, you need to be able, our company works and operates in 12 states, and so we got to be able to comply, have licensure for the pigs you're overseeing, and make sure you're complying with the different VCPR requirements in each state. So all those states except for one have a state definition which are slightly different, and the other one would default back to the FDA description, but all we do need to comply with all of them within our VFDs. Be able to write that VFD for a flow of pigs. Be able to use multiple feed mills in a timely. So the way I'd kind of describe this next part is kind of or what I've heard is kind of like an airport map of flights coming in and out. We got pigs going from point A to point B. We've got pigs coming. We got pigs going. We got feed trucks coming. Feed trucks going. It's very complex, and so be able to forecast accurately where pigs are going and which sites they're going to and which flow and which feed mill they're going to feed out of is extremely important when we're talking about a wide geographic area and multiple feed mills involved. To be able to do it effectively and not have to do every single one kind of at the 11th hour for individual sites. And then the other thing that's important is to be able to integrate that electronic VFD into our prescription program and also into our feed manufacturing programs so that there's kind of a seamless transition on how those are assigned. Just a brief overview. Most people probably have something similar, but having a feed program that's searchable, so has your medication plans, your feed budgets, being able to integrate the VFD into that so that you can search by a site or search by a flow and be able to pull up all those VFDs and show that they're attached to those animals, and also be able to generate, when you generate a feed order, that VFD goes to the feed mill as you generate that feed order for that particular site, so that there's less mechanical doing things and more of the generated automatically electronic. This is what our computer programmer sent to me, and that's just how he thinks about what are all the things I got to be thinking about. I don't know what any of it means, but there's a lot, and I don't know the first thing about. I can hardly check my email. I'm not very technologically savvy for somebody relatively young, so there's the computer programming thing is insanely complex, and I know that there's going to be a lot of when you think about the current program and how do we integrate this VFD so it integrates seamlessly into the program. I know it's easier said than done. Fortunately, any computer software people or company who have their own type of program are going to have access to programmers who are going to be able to, and probably like us, are already currently working on trying to make it so it will seamlessly fit in with the feed program. Certainly there's options for other producers like Global Vet Link out there too, which may not be as seamless, but a way to still do that fairly efficiently with an electronic version. And so ideally, what we'd be able to do is be able to go in and pick our flows of pigs, and we'd generate which sites are going to fill, and then check off each site, and that should automatically fill with address, the number of pigs on that site, and be able to do that for each feed mill that they feed out of, and generate relatively efficiently a script for those flows that are going to get the same feed ration in the right site, the right addresses, the right number of pigs. From an antibiotic decision-making concept in a VCPR, I think it's important. We certainly don't have the highest veterinary to pig ratio in the industry, and so being able to go to every site on a routine basis just to check a box to say you were there isn't very practical. Understanding the challenges and the diseases that are occurring within a flow is the important thing, and that's obviously the same for everybody out there. Nobody wants to just be checking a box. People want to do things that are constructive and an effective use of their time. When you look at the federal definition of a VCPR, I think everybody knows, but basically you've engaged into that agreement with the client that you're making those responsible decisions for medications. You have sufficient knowledge of the patient by examination or visit to a facility where those patients may be managed, and then be able to provide for follow-up care. That's the federal definition. Of course, like I said, there's many different variations within state regulations as well. And so our goal, again, is not to go to every site every X number of months to be able to say I was there, check. Is to be able to demonstrate that we're making responsible decisions by doing the diagnostics, by being at sites in the flow and understanding what are the health challenges. And to be able to do that, we do, anytime we have sick animals within a flow, we want routine autopsies and samples submitted to diagnostic labs. And then what we try to do is capture that information in some diagnostic software or also into some spreadsheet type software, so we can gather that information and make some use out of it rather than just one person understanding what did I see in this group or what did I see in that group. And so we do have a program that we get some automatic dumps from the veterinary diagnostic labs into that is helpful for us. And we can take and sort by a flow and look at what's our sensitivity pattern for different bacteria within a flow, do a Pareto chart to see how often we've been diagnosing disease in a system or in a flow or over a certain time period. And so that helps really, I think, demonstrate that we've been doing the appropriate diagnostics, overseeing those animals, making appropriate medication decisions. So kind of to finish up, I just kind of put a list together, and Lauren and Liz may have touched on most of these already, but some things that are probably critical or important if you're going down the path of, from a company perspective, of trying to create a VFD program that integrates with your feed software. And so First of all, there's minimum information for VFD inclusion that must be on that form. And I'm not going to list it all. You can certainly get that list, but making sure that all that minimum information is on that form. Do not write VFDs for over-the-counter feed medications. So don't set up a system where, well, it's just easy for me to do somehow check, even if I'm using Mecadox to do the same thing, so I'm doing the same consistent thing for every feed. They do not allow, they do not want to see VFDs written for those non-medically important medications. VFDs can be used for multiple locations as long as they're from a single feed mill, and so that's probably, that will be definitely a difficult thing. It's easy to say, and as we get closer to it, it's going to be harder. What they don't want, and they've made it pretty clear, I think, what they don't want is somebody going, well, that's easy. I'll just write a VFD for every single site I got and send it to every single feed mill that I make pigs for, and then I'm covered. Well, if you don't use a VFD, if you don't fill it at a feed mill, they want that VFD to be canceled. So, and I think that's pretty clear in the language, if I'm not mistaken. So, they don't want a big blanket system going on. They want to make sure that this is following the spirit of the guidance. The 6-month expiration date thing in the context of refills, like Liz said, is a little cloudy right now. So the way I took it is for a site, you can do refills within that 6 months. And so today, the way VFDs are typically done, for a great example is a nursery site. If it's a continuous flow nursery site, you estimate the amount of feed you're using at that site during that time, that 90 days today. And that would be kind of an ongoing refill situation. Or if you have a nursery that may turn in a 6-month time period, now with the new rule 3 times in that 6 months, you could use that VFD for each of the 3 turns. And I know that there's some cloudiness to that now on how they're going to define that. So, stay tuned, more to come on that piece. Again, the original records kept for 2 years. And then there's a couple things you do have to contain on that VFD, a couple statements. One is that it's a statement regarding not being able to use drugs off-label, and that has to be on every VFD statement. And then another one is for combination of drugs when there's a VFD drug involved, that there's one of 3 statements you have to put on there. And so looking those up and making sure you got the right statement when you're using combination drugs on minor VFD.